Well, welcome to the third episode of UC Analytics Unleashed, maximizing efficiency. Now, my name is Kevin Keeler, and I am joined, as always, at least for the first three episodes until we kick you off, Christopher. But
never stopping, Kevin. Never
Christopher
stopping.
Martini from Voss. Christopher was just suggesting we should have been dressed up, because this is the Halloween episode. But
this is a missed opportunity. Missed opportunity.
Yeah,
when people play this episode for their children, Kevin, they're going to be the kids are going to be disappointed that we weren't dressed up.
Yeah, there you go. So what I wanted to just quickly do is, so this is episode 3. If you're joining us for this episode, fantastic. If you've missed the first 2 episodes, just a quick recap. Episode 1, we really talked about the evolution of analytics, how it evolved from usage, which focused on billing, to quality and reliability, like does any of this UCaaS stuff actually work, to adoption, who is using what, including, user satisfaction, which is important. And now, what we're really been talking about in this series, and our intent is really to talk about business outcomes. And a lot of that is either, driving revenue or cost optimization. In episode 2, then we took a deep dive into the challenge that organizations face in terms of right-sizing their licensing, especially as with some of these platforms, and especially people have multiple platforms, licensing is even more complex. And I'd say it's getting even more complex. So just yesterday, there's a new Copilot license in the Microsoft, world. The WebEx AI stuff for now is free, but I was at WebEx 1 a week ago, and I don't think it's always going to be free, because there's, heavy computational expense to provide these AI services. For right now, the AI services in Zoom is free. So, the challenge of licensing, and we covered it in episode 2, but maybe we'll have to come back to it in 6 months, because I feel it's not.
The landscape could change dramatically.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and
for
so
sure.
in this episode, we really want to talk about capacity cost optimization. And so we're going to talk about some of those things. And I think organizations that don't look at these analytics. I'm working with a big engineering firm, and they haven't looked at this. And so if you haven't looked at it, you may be overpaying, and, with respect to DIDs or concurrent SIP trunk channels or bandwidth or ghost devices. And then we're going to talk about automation and distributed administration. So lots of areas where you could either, save cost or really kind of shift your investments and get more return out of that. So I don't know, Christopher, so that's kind of a quick recap and an intro. I mean, we're talking about efficiency and maximizing. You work with, lots and lots of customers and service providers, and these complex multinational customers. What have you heard and seen, and, kick us off here?
Yeah, surprisingly, Kevin, what you mentioned a moment ago about the engineering firm that you're working with. I had a meeting with a firm that will remain nameless from a different vertical just this week. And the discussion was similar, right? Where, if we look at the topic from last week, licensing, I feel that's at least being discussed. It's at least being considered in almost every organization that you talk to during a migration period or any kind of major upgrade. There's some type of rationalization of the licensing. Trying to have the conversation beyond that, when you talk to a large organ, and this was tens of thousands of employees, right, globally. When you talk to an organization of that size, that their pushback in the discussion wasn't that they didn't necessarily see the value. It was that schedule. They were very, very busy. And when they talked about the things that they were trying to do, almost every single one of those things could be enhanced by insight into the platform that they were making decisions about. So I'm still surprised to be honest with you, that everything that you had on that last slide isn't
Yeah.
top of mind, right? You're making an investment. If you look at what organizations have done over the last few years, you've poured all of this money in this into the evolution towards a digital workplace.
Right.
Insights and analytics is like when you come in and harvest the gains, right? You've laid the foundation where we're moving towards a digital workplace. We're going to do service delivery and management, and we're moving to this new collaboration platform and away from these legacy tools. And there have been great gains to be had from that, right? If we just look at things like contact center, right? How much has contact center evolved over the last couple of years? It's been amazing. And the addition of virtual agents. Well, you're putting all of these things in place so that you can gain efficiencies, so that you can boost productivity. But if you're not actively measuring those things and the pieces that go in, right? This is I think an important point, is to remind people of what efficiency is, right? Efficiency isn't a discussion, it's not a hope, it's a calculation, right? It's an understanding of what goes into the system and what you get out of the system. And the number of organizations that have a belief, right? The people that I spoke with earlier this week had a belief that they did not have elements of their environment that were underutilized, right? Or they weren't over provisioned in some areas. But a belief is very different than actually looking at the data. So I think it's critical, right, to have a view on these things.
But yeah, help me out here, Christopher, because here's the thing. Like, it's pretty clear, and we talked about this evolution of analytics. It's pretty clear if a senior person has a bad call, that then they say, "Oh my gosh, why was this a bad call?" Yeah. So there's a triggering event, right? But with this, especially the analytics and the provisioning or the potential over provisioning, it's like there isn't really a triggering event unless somebody goes and says you got to cut your budget or whatever. But
no.
But so how does, from a Voss perspective and with Voss Insights, how does an organization start, and what are some of the key questions that people listening to this, what should they ask, and kind of, if they don't have the answer, is that a trigger, right? So help me figure out, how do you start, right? Or what, how do you get your CFO to be interested, or
Well, in the organizations where these types of projects move quickly, oftentimes the CFO is actively involved and driving the discussion, right? Because nobody loves getting money for free more than your CFO, right? If you can go to your CFO and say, we have a project and we're going to satisfy the following things. So within our organization, we have a need to understand the quality of the service that we're delivering to our employees. Analytics is going to help us understand the quality of that service delivery, if there are outages, all of the things that a modern IT department is thinking about when it comes to service delivery. Then, Mr. or Mrs. CFO, along with that, we have the opportunity to really mine data. Like you have helped us over the last few years with our budgets. We've deployed all of these new environments, these new systems. This analytics piece is the glue that can tie that whole view together. So you want to include your CFO in those discussions. I love talking to a CFO about these things because it's immediately apparent to a CFO, I can help you understand if you're paying for things that you don't need to be paying for.
Right.
I can help you understand if the investments that you're making, the same way that any CFO is looking at charts and dashboards about every other investment that they make. Why should your investment in technology be different, right? It can't be different if you're trying to be a leading organization. So including organizations, and Microsoft calls it other rooms of the house, right? Including some of the other rooms of the house in the discussion. Let's get out of the IT room a little bit and let's include some other rooms of the house. That's one piece. The second piece is you don't need to guess at where the gains might be. right? There are organizations like Voss that are doing this on a daily basis with
Right.
organizations all over the world. There has been a lot of learning, even over the last 12 to 18 months. There's been an evolution in thinking around analytics. And the organizations that are out there doing it, we can bring those best practices to you. We can share. In another organization of your size, when we looked at these categories, these were the types of gains and improvements that we saw. The DID example is a fantastic example where, and I think you had Ghost devices on your list as well for this episode. Those are things where, to your point, no alarm bell goes off every month, right? No alarm bell goes off. You just keep paying for that thing. And I would love to say that I'm immune from this, Kevin, in my own life, but I guarantee you I'm paying for Paramount Plus 4 different times every month, right?
Yeah.
Because I get the notification that the charge has gone through, and I think, oh, I meant to look into that this month, right? But it's easy to put those things off. Take that Paramount Plus subscription and multiply it by 2,000 or 3,000, right? We had a customer of ours where we just looked at the DID piece. What are you paying for that you do not need to pay for? And it was an over $1 million gain for them.
Wow. I know, and that's like
over $1 million.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point, because DIDs, it could be $1, and kind of in more of North America. In some geographies, they're more expensive.
Yep.
But to your point, you multiply that by some of the complex organizations that we work with, you work with. That's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and that's per month, right? So
every
that's
single
a simple
month
thing. And one of the other things which ties back to episode 2, licensing, in sort of an indirect way, is some of the license changes mean, specifically in the Microsoft ecosystem, where I have a lot of depth and spend a lot of time, some of the shared device licenses and the way you can do things, you used to maybe need DIDs for more people to support inbound and outbound
calling. You do today.
Yeah. And you do today. So you could be over provisioned in that. And it's a small thing, but I feel it's like there's never an alarm going off, right? And I would say the same thing is maybe in the concurrent SIP trunk channels, because there's a good likelihood that your PSTN calling, who makes and receives calls, and what the maximum load is, it probably has changed over the past 18, 24 months.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are sitting there listening to this and you don't know if it's changed, it could have gone up, it could have gone down, but if you don't know if it's changed or how it's changed, you may be paying for concurrent SIP trunk channels, if that's the way that you're kind of getting PSTN access as well. And then the Ghost devices, I kind of want to explore this, because it kind of seems like it's a bit of a sunk cost, right? But if you have, it could just be, USB headphone devices that you provide to people. And I think, analytics can show, well, what they're using. And sometimes organizations might give them a USB speakerphone and a USB headset, and you want to kind of connect that with usage and adoption and the quality that the device is providing.
And issues, right? Like you make that investment, and let's say you've got 10,000 employees, 20,000 employees, whatever the number is. It's impossible without an analytics tool to properly understand whether or not the assumptions that you made match reality, right? The assumptions that you make when you're looking at a project like this, let's say it's a full UC migration, right? You're going from a legacy platform, maybe it's PBX, maybe it's some other VoIP solution, and you're moving to the great new world of UC. Going into that, you're going to make a bunch of assumptions. You're maybe, for the best projects, you're talking to pockets of employees, right? And you're doing user group discussions, and you're getting feedback. So, you know, you're taking every precaution that you can in the lead up to the project. But then reality happens after that, right?
Yeah.
Reality happens when the project is fully deployed. Now, all of those user personas that you and the other folks on the team, on the project team, thought so carefully about, we've assigned those now. Now we can go back and see, well, do pre-sales technical engineers all need to have that same profile? As it turns out, there's 150 of them that are all in a single location. They don't travel at all, and that capacity all needs to be assigned to that one location, right? That one branch. Without a proper analytics tool, it's really challenging to get your head around, hey, here's what the feedback that we got from employees before doing the project. Based on that feedback, these are the assumptions that we made. This is the data that we pulled from the legacy environment. Based on that data, these are the assumptions that we made about the new environment. But once that new environment is up, it doesn't care about the assumptions that you made going in, right? It doesn't care about that. What it really cares about is, does the remote work policy that you just implemented last year match the user, right? What's the user doing?
Right.
Well, without an analytics tool, it's tough to see that. And it's tough to drive additional efficiency, right? There's another piece to the efficiency discussion, which is, sure, it's good to capture those unnecessary expenses, and goodness, right? Shouldn't we all be doing that? But the second piece is, based on what we're able to see in the environment, where can we drive automation into the process and lower our cost to serve? If you're a service provider, right, telco, systems integrator, you're delivering a managed service as an MSP, you know, you need to be bringing revenue in from all of your customers, and it's an incredibly competitive market, right? It's not uncommon to be in discussions about cents, right, pennies on per user per month discussion. Not uncommon to negotiate through that. Once that happens, you know, if you're not digging into, okay, how do we drive down our cost to serve, right? We've brought the customers to us, and now each and every month we're responsible for service delivery for those customers. We need to keep the quality as high as we can and lower our cost to serve as much as possible. Looking at your analytics and having an opportunity to drive additional efficiency through automation is another huge piece of the puzzle, right? Imagine what something like self-service does for your costs. You have a model in place today where you're able to look and see, oh, with these types of employees or with these types of headsets, we get the following number of calls, either for pin resets or challenges, or, you know, this particular office is hiring like crazy and they're adding employees each and every week. Empowering a person in that office, right? On the Voss side, we have a product called Automate, which gives you the ability to say, okay, you, Kevin, are responsible for these people in this office, and we can give you a portal that is specific to you and the users that you're responsible for. So it's not like you need to hand the keys to the kingdom to every single employee, right? We can put guardrails on that, but if you don't have a reliable view into the data, what's being used, what types of calls are coming in for support, right? What are the most common things that we're seeing? If we define a user persona, we should have expectations of how that user persona behaves. How do you determine whether or not you have people that are behaving like they could be in a less expensive persona, right? This persona is our top tier executive, you know, level persona, and it's kind of expensive for us to support that person. We do some superhuman things to make sure that executives have a great experience on our platform. How do we drive that efficiency? It all comes down to the data, right? Recognizing what the trends are, how people are really using the environment, not how we thought they would use the environment, and then attacking each of those buckets. All of the things that you mentioned is like a separate opportunity to go and kind of reap a benefit for the organization, right? We shouldn't be paying for DIDs. We shouldn't be paying for
Right.
additional SIP trunking if we don't need it. But how do we know, right,
Right.
if we need it?
So that's a lot of stuff there, Christopher. So I just want to highlight some things that stuck out for me. So, I think you highlighted the difference between, what typically is called sentiment analysis, asking people ahead of
Yeah.
time, and behavioral analytics, which is, okay, they said they wanted this or this is how they operate, but let's track that from a behavioral analytics perspective. And I think that's, what you've shown me that Voss Insights can do, and then attach that to the cost. The other thing that I just wanted just to make sure that people, took away and really thought about is this automation piece, right? Because the ability to distribute, whether it's through self-service or just even inside your IT organization, the ability to safely, you talked about guardrails. So you've shown me how you can create these kind of custom forms that just let people change things that don't get them into trouble, right? So with great granularity, regardless of the underlying platform or platforms, it could be on-prem or in the cloud or multiple cloud providers. With Voss Automate, you can create these screens that either individuals who potentially can do few things, but that means they don't have to open a ticket. So there's definitely a maximizing efficiency thing.
Yep.
Or like distributed IT people that, as you said, in a branch location, they may be much more familiar with, kind of what's happening, especially like that with your example, lots of people are coming into a particular location or a particular geography. Often being able to distribute that, the Voss Automate allows you to do that in a much more granular way for every platform, right?
Yeah, we could actually do one better than that, right? With
Right.
flow through provisioning, we can take inputs from another system. So you have you have a process for onboarding employees. Voss can come in, look at that process, and snap into that process. So when the new employee is set up in some other system, we can use that as a trigger to flow through the provisioning for all of their UC. So there's no one that needs to be thinking about, oh, let me log in now to the tenant. Let me add a user here. All right, now let me go and look through the list of available DIDs. I'm going to assign a DID. Is that DID appropriate for where that person, like, you don't need to do that anymore.
Right.
You put in the basics about the employee into the regular system that you use for onboarding, and then we can look at a few key attributes and flow through the provisioning that way. So if you're in this office, and if you have a title of this, or if you report to this person, whatever the attributes are that you want to base the decision on, we can look at that and then simply provision the user without anyone having to touch anything. Fully auditable, right? If something, you need to go back and look at exactly what happened or who was provisioned, all of those things in 2023 should be areas where, if you care about efficiency, if you care about driving down the cost, you should be investigating those things, because there are huge, real hard dollar gains to be had there in each of those buckets.
So let me just a quick thing. I think we've hit on all of these. We've talked about this. Maybe we didn't talk so much about bandwidth, but I think we've covered that off. And just to remind people, this is the URL that you suggested if you're interested. If anybody's interested in Voss Insights or this Voss Automation, which you guys have very clear naming conventions, right? Voss Automate, yes. If you're interested in Voss
Easy
Automate,
to follow.
Yeah, there you go. You can go to vosssolutions.com. So, okay. So I think, I would say that's a good discussion, at least to get people aware of the questions that, if you don't know the answers, you should think about.
Should be looking for them.
You should definitely look for those in terms of maximizing efficiency. Next week, same time, same place, LinkedIn Live, we're going to be talking about, how these analytics can help you in this. And I feel like we have to agree now not to say hybrid work, but Talk
Agreed.
about the new working models, and let's maybe not talk about how the office should be a magnet and not a mandate. I feel like if either of us use either of those phrases next week, we should like donate to some charity or whatever. But definitely there is an opportunity to help you think about your room deployment, your real estate, and that's really what we're going to talk about. Next Thursday, November 9th. It's 8 a.m. where you are. Now, this week, thankfully, I mean, in a sense, I'm back in my home office, home studio, so I don't look like a ghost. So I'm back in the Eastern time zone, so it's 11 a.m. Eastern, and then 4 p.m. London. This was interesting because this was the week where
the only
London,
week
it was like, if you look at this and great kudos to the people that actually got this right. It was 3 p.m. for this week only in terms of that daylight savings time. So next week we're back to where it's 4 p.m. London time.
Yeah, I'm really excited for next week, Kevin, right? If you look at the things that we've discussed in episodes 1, 2, and 3, and let's say you took our advice and you go and implement those things, I think it's fantastic for your organization. Obviously, I genuinely believe there are gains to be had there for your organization, but I don't think that you win any thought leadership awards for saying, hey, maybe we should have a handle on how many licenses we're using compared to how many we've bought, right? There shouldn't be a medal for that. But this next episode, when we start to really think about where can we go, right? The past few episodes have been, where should you be? Right? These are the things that you should be doing. And the next episode is really about, where could you take this? When we start to look at the environments that we have access to, the data that's there, if you're truly, if you've gone through digital transformation, if you consider yourself a digital workplace, where can we take it? I look forward to the discussion.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And to build on that, the first episodes, I guess, they of course apply to the financial side and the IT side. But this one, episode 4, I mean, certainly if you can tap the shoulder of some of the facilities people, like these are the questions that they are wrestling with, and they're tough questions. But certainly, we're going to take a peek into, okay, well, how can analytics make it? It certainly still is a tough strategic decision, but analytics can definitely, help you make better decisions. And
we'll hit not just real estate, but we'll hit sales, right? There are some other groups outside of that real estate group. That's a good headline for the episode, because I think it gets people to think, wait a minute, it's a UC discussion, but we're going to talk about something absolutely not UC related. There are some other pockets there that I look forward to working through.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So, well, thank you for your insights, examples, and experience, Christopher, in this episode, and look forward to having people join us this time next week.
Yeah, always a pleasure, Kevin.
Bye for now.